things that are worth your attention.
I'm just so grateful that you joined us.
It is a pleasure.
Welcome to Media Path. I'm Fritz Colby.
And I'm Louise Palanker.
A talented man is our guest today. He's one of the stars of a show that was a huge hit at NBC in my early days there, L.A. Law. He's Blair Underwood, an actor, producer, and director, and he's accompanied by Joe McClean. Blair has a really interesting new title called Presenter. He's done 8 novels, and he's got a new one called Sins of Survivor, sort of above the title, presented by Blair Underwood. And Joe was responsible for this amazing novel, which is interesting and historical, and we'll be talking to both these guys in just a few minutes. So, Weezy, what do you have?
I have a recommendation, Fritz. It's called Stick.
Stick it or Stick?
No, it's just called Stick.
Okay.
S-T-I-C-K is actually the nickname of the main character, who is played by Owen Wilson. So Fritz, Stick is on Apple Plus, Apple TV, Apple Plus, starring Owen Wilson as a train wreck of a former pro golfer, Bryce Cahill, who magnificently blew up his professional life in a public meltdown and is reaching for redemption by coaching and mentoring a troubled teen golfing phenom called Santi. The series quickly becomes a ragtag buddy team road pick as Price and Santi load into an old camper with Price's grumpy caddy Mitz, Santi's mom, and a well-fit misfit Zero. In typical road and pal pick fashion, they fight and bond as they hit the highway in search of golf tournaments for Santi, and we learn the true nature of their wounds and their struggles. It's all entirely fun and human, and the performances are fantastic to the point where Peter Dager as Santi even hikes up his sleeve before attacking a golf ball. You'll also find Lily Kay, Mark Maron, and Mariano Trevino in Stick. And if you can make a golf series with someone named Trevino, I say take a swing at it.
I saw a couple episodes. I loved it.
Yeah.
I love Owen Wilson. I wanted to see if Mark Maron was a good actor, and he is. He does a good job.
He's a great actor.
But here's what I want to know. Is that kid really the golfer? Because he has chops in this movie.
He says no, but he was a baseball player, so he just sort of like lowered his swing.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to talk about a Netflix show called Sunday Best. This is a fascinating look at the Ed Sullivan Show. At one time during the 60s, it was the most viewed show on television on CBS. It was a show that those of us who were interested in comedians would get to see 3 to 5 minute snippets of comedians' acts. It was also a show that was a platform for the biggest musical acts in the world, Elvis Presley and the Beatles. But there was an aspect to the Ed Sullivan Show that most people didn't realize at the time, and that was the impact he had on introducing black acts to America and the world. At the start of the Ed Sullivan Show, America was still in the throes of Jim Crow. The KKK had a firm toehold still in the South. This was the start of the civil rights movement. Ed Sullivan was a firm supporter of African-American talent and many times went to the wall to get them booked on the show. The first and maybe the most important was Harry Belafonte. The CBS brass nixed booking Belafonte. Their excuse was his left-leaning so-called communist bent. Everybody knew that was a thin excuse for him being black. Ed defied the bosses and invited him on the show. And as luck would have it, the ratings were huge. 35 million people watched that night. Even Southern blacks who could watch what they wanted in the privacy of their homes. It changed the face of show business and television in general. There's great testimony from Lena Horne, James Brown, Diana Ross, Nina Simone, Dionne Warwick, Berry Gordy. Berry Gordy talked about how important Ed Sullivan was in helping Motown to work its way into the homes of middle-class whites, doing a tremendous amount to advance the civil rights movement. You see a 13-year-old Stevie Wonder bringing the house down with his harmonica on fingertips. The backstory of Ed's support for acts of color is this. He was born and raised in Harlem, and he was also Irish. And when he was growing up, the Irish were looked down on, maybe not as much, but almost as much as blacks in many circles. So Ed Sullivan had a special empathy for segments of society that were looked down on. For those of us of a certain age, this is a great piece of television history, shedding light on an aspect of that I bet the majority is I didn't realize was even there. Sunday Best is on Netflix. Great show.
And Fritz, I loved it. And did you notice the fear-based branding that was used by segregationists? They use the fear tactic Soviet Negro Republic.
Yeah.
And today we don't hear the right say the word Democrat unless they preface it with radical or lunatic. So I think they've been pulling this stuff for centuries.
It was and it was the McCarthy era, and what was unbelievable to me was how much power this man has, that he could stand off to the CBS brass. I mean, they lost huge sponsors like Lincoln because they were in the South and their people complained. It was spectacular. Anyway. It's so much fun for us to have this talent on the show today. I think the role that made him a household name was attorney Jonathan Rollins on NBC's L.A. Law. He's done lots of film work as well, including Just Cause, Rules of Engagement. He's gotten 2 Golden Globe nominations, 5 NAACP Image Awards, a Daytime Emmy, a Grammy Award. He's also carved out a great spot for himself, being what's called a presenter. He picks out novels that he's drawn to, novels that he thinks may have a chance to later become a film or maybe a stage production, and he presents them to publishers, gets his name over the title as presented by, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I think, if I'm not wrong, this is his 8th one of these. This one's called Sins of Survivors. Now, he doesn't write the novels, he presents them, and we have the man that wrote this particular novel with us today as well, Joe McClean, and it's really very. I'm a big history buff, particularly the and around and shortly after the migration from the South in the 1930s. He presents them and hopefully gets them national and international exposure. Blair Underwood and Joe McClean. Hello, boys. How are you?
Hello.
So nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
Is Blair there?
I am absolutely here. I was astonished by that introduction. That was perfectly said. I don't have to say anything. And
no, you do. Just want to hear your deep voice. You got a great set of pipes. That's why I'm gonna back you in your movie about Marvin Gaye. I'm gonna pay for the whole thing. Don't worry about it. I want you to do that movie about Marvin Gaye. I heard that was
I love it.
So
you
anyway,
and me both.
I'll give you a little bit about Joe. Joe worked on a project that has not been released, but will be exciting when it is, called Viral, with Sarah Silverman and Alfre Woodard. He's done Resident Evil, one of the Resident Evils, and Life Tracker. And this is a great story. It's about the Carter brothers. And Blair, tell us the story about the Carter brothers.
Well, first of all, thank you for having both of us today on your show. Appreciate you both so much. The Carter brothers are 2 brothers who migrate up to a place called Black Bottom, Detroit in the 1930s and 1940s. And this story is about their families, how they grow, their wives, their children, and the empire, literally the empire they build over a few decades right there in Black Bottom, Detroit. That's the broad strokes of it all.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Black Bottom because that's a word that is in the blues industry. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This isn't that. Black Bottom, in this case, refers to an area of Detroit, and it's about the rich black soil found in and around the river bottom. That's what it was named for. But it turned out to be this vibrant black community with thriving black cultural institutions, along with plenty of middle and upper class wealth in the 30s and 40s. It was kind of like Tulsa, Oklahoma, but instead of being destroyed by guns and bombs, Black Bottom was destroyed by urban renewal, which is something we deal with every day. So it's a really fascinating piece of history. I love that.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's what drew me to this, really, the context of Black Bottom. And you got to hear Joe speak on it because he's a brilliant writer, but he is an historian himself, and he can tell you all about Black Bottom. But I had done a play a few years back called Paradise Blue, written by Dominic Morisseau, set in Black Bottom. And when I met Joe, who not only had something to do with Viral, by the way, he wrote Viral and produced Viral. So his DNA is all over that movie, Viral. And that's the first time we had a chance to work together. I directed it and acted in it as well. And the fact that he knew about Black Bottom, heard of Black Bottom, and knew all about it, I was fascinated. And that's kind of the impetus of the birth of Sins of Survivors, how it started.
So can you tell us how much of the story is based on real-life characters? I'm assuming the Carter family is fictional, but are they based on real folks?
Correct. It is. The Carter family is fictional, but the things that they go through, the actual, day-to-day tasks that they work with are all 100% true, down to there's a Shriners Day parade, right? Like that happens on the exact date. I just went through the newspapers and found, okay, well, this is what was really happening in this town, and what would that have looked like? And then I plopped my family down on top of it to see how they would react to the events of the day.
Was this the first novel you'd written, Joe?
It's the first novel that I have allowed people to read.
Good
Wow.
distinction.
And Blair, what do you look at? I mean, you've done this with others as well. What do you look for? What makes you think that a novel has potential to take it to another life, as you would like to do?
Well, I think there are two things. It first has to grab my attention personally, and then I have to think that an audience will find it fascinating and entertaining as well. And it would really three things. The third thing is my publisher, Judith Kerr, has to say, I think it'll sell, and I think it's interesting as well.
How did you research your story, Joe? And did you speak to anyone who lived there? Or do we still have anybody who can speak about it? I know that there have been some historians that have maybe preserved the history through interviews. So how did you begin your research?
Correct. So it's everything like everything today. It started just on the web, right? I was looking for interviews. There are organizations out there like the Black Bottom Archives, which is like actively and aggressively collecting the stories before they disappear. And there's a big resurgence of energy around trying to redevelop the neighborhood because it was originally knocked down to build the freeway. And now they have announced that they're going to fill in that freeway. And so the neighborhood of Black Bottom is trying to come back and sort of retake that land.
There any homes survived? Anything survive?
It's very, 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 very little. There's very little there. It's most of it is the main drag was Hastings Street, and that street is the actual freeway. And then the rest of it got swallowed up in development, to try to get it really when it became something for investors to take. They sold it off to private investors, and those investors wanted to knock down the slums. The urban renewal was to just get a better dollar. So that pushed all the Black families out. But what was really exciting to me about this neighborhood was that it was something incredibly brilliant that came out of tragedy, right? This was one of the only places in Detroit that Black families were allowed to live because of redlining in the area, right? So you couldn't live near certain areas because you're too close to white people. And so once they're there on their own and they're sort of by themselves, they don't have someone to pick up their trash. The city's not coming around, so they got to have their own trash man, right? They don't have someone to take care of grandma when she passes away, so they got to make their own undertaker. They do the same thing with lawyers and doctors and shop owners and the whole nine yards. They even had a candy maker in town. And so this thing where these Black families were put in a specific area because they were thought of as not as good or worthless. And then these Black families showed what their value actually was, not only proving to white people that they had it in them, but proving to themselves that they could do it and they could do it brilliantly. And then from Black Bottom, you can make a very straight line connection that Motown came out of that, right? It's just incredible. So they built something incredible that is forever in our world.
Just for my own understanding, so how close are the projects where the Supremes lived, for example, to Black Bottom? I know
They were in Black Bottom.
They were?
Wow.
That project was in Black Bottom, yeah.
But that was already the 60s, so they already would have been moved out.
They broke, so
Yeah.
there was different chapters of that project. So when
Okay.
it started, actually the ground was broken by Eleanor Roosevelt. But it continued to grow and grow and grow from there. Back when the word project was still something good. Back then, it was about upward mobility, and then sort of over the decades, it has become what we think of a project today.
Blair, I think what relates to people in this book in the current day is that, urban renewal, gentrification, that's all the big argument. It's going on in L.A. now, in little pockets of L.A. where Black culture is destroyed, or in some cases in L.A., Latin culture is destroyed, and people are constantly having to push back against that. So people can relate to that, I think, in this story. It's kind of a universal situation that continues today.
You have a quote in your book, Joe, that says, if a life vest is never thrown into the deep end, you either drown or you learn to do business with sharks. So I think you plant seeds and they blossom. So, but some of those seeds will blossom into the characters that are hardened and that are doing certain business that maybe greases the wheels for the infrastructure underneath. But what they're doing is really dangerous and scary. And this is the Carters. So talk about them for a moment.
That's correct. You know what's wonderful actually is that special to Detroit was that the mob in Detroit was Jewish. It was the only city that was run by a Jewish mob called the Purple Gang.
Right.
And so listen, Detroit becomes big basically because Michigan went dry 2 years prior to the Fed. So it had a head start, and it's got an international border with Canada. So when all of a sudden, when Prohibition is enacted, people were like, oh no, where are we going to get our booze? They looked right to Detroit because they had a 2-year head start of getting illegal hooch out of Canada.
Okay. Wow.
So all of a sudden, the Purple Gang got really, really rich because they were supplying Capone in Chicago with all of his booze.
Okay.
For that old era. But so I really think this era of the 30s is incredible because, one, we're coming out of the Depression, right? But we're also not that far out of booze being re-legalized again. And so we saw this most recently, I think, as marijuana became more legal around the country. But the concern is always, okay, well, we're going to try to legalize something so that the criminal aspect of it disappears. But then what do those criminals do?
Right.
And you could draw a line to fentanyl, right? You got to go to something bigger or worse, or where you're still going to have bad guys that need to make money. So if you legalize the thing that they're making money on, they're going to find something else. Mm-hmm. And so the Carter brothers, there's two of them. One feels like fight for the family no matter what. I will kill for my family as long as I make sure that they survive. And the other one goes, we've really accomplished a lot. We've grown, we've built, and we can use the power that we've got for our family now, and we can use that for the greater good of our entire community. And so now they come to a crossroads, and one brother says, let's go this way, and the other one says, let's go that. And we got to figure out which brother is stronger.
This is Ben and Jasper, right?
Ben and Jasper.
And it's
Fritz, I have to apologize. When you're speaking before, my Zoom froze for a second, but I heard you speak of regentrification in the book, although we don't use that word, and what's going on now. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Joe, the other day, Hill Harper, who lives in Detroit. And he was saying, who's invested in Detroit. And he was saying the push from the government because Black Bottom is trying to come back. And there are people from the Black community and other communities trying to bring that back the way it was and much better. But then you have forces in Detroit that are all about gentrification and moving and keeping Black and brown people basically out of that area and to gentrify it.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Really sad. So it's politics, it's love, it's crime. It's a fantastic story. Talk about the Black migration. This family came from Alabama north and stopped in Detroit. People would come to Chicago or Detroit or the other industrial northern central cities to get jobs in the factories and everything. Tell us how they made the migration.
Yeah, so it was a very common story, right? What was happening with the Carter brothers, but they experienced tragedy in their family, and then they spend years slowly just following the work, and the work was north. So they spend some time in Kentucky in coal mining. They go up to Ohio, and then they eventually end up in Detroit because Ford is offering to pay blacks and whites $5 a day, which was unheard of. Now he gets sort of canonized for being like the hero of this story, but the truth is that the jobs weren't equal. The pay was equal. Everybody's getting the same amount of money, but the Black people were doing the incredibly dangerous jobs at the foundry and things that were causing disease and cancer because of the fumes and the paint and the lead and all that stuff. And the whites weren't getting any of that.
So Blair, when you look at this project, you picture yourself playing Jasper or playing Ben?
For so long I tried to not picture myself playing the role, but then Joe's kind of pushed it along the way. But probably Ben. Initially I would say Jasper because I always love playing bad guys. And I'm open to either one because they both have their values, I think. Ben is to oversimplify, the good guy. And Jasper would be considered the one with the edge and the one who will kill for whatever it takes to protect his family and keep the legacy alive.
Yeah, they are two brothers. The book begins with a horrific tragedy that's somewhat caused by the mischievous antics of the younger one who did not understand the full scope of the ramifications. And so they're forged that way with that initial wound. But then there's other wounds that are incurred along the way that either, pull them apart or push them together. So tell us a little, without giving away too much, tell us a little bit more about what folks will encounter when they read the story.
Blair, you want to have it?
No, go for it.
Yeah, listen, I think families are just incredibly complicated, and that's the part of this story that everybody that's reading it can understand. And these two brothers, though born into the same family and having lived through the same experiences, they experience life completely differently, right? They have different jobs in their family. One becomes the de facto patriarch, right? And has the responsibility of taking care of the children and his siblings as the children. And the other one gets all the benefit that his brother works hard for. So while Jasper's working his ass off in the coal mines, Ben gets to go to college and he gets to have a trip to France and experience Europe. He gets to have these things that his brother gave him. And so there's this weird push and pull where the more educated brother, the more worldly brother in that sense, understands that the way that, or he feels the way to go forward is through politics and community. But he also understands that his brother gave him everything and made him who he is. And turning your back on that is impossible.
And
I think we all deal with that in our own families to some degree.
And you also tell the story, and I just stop me if you don't want to give this thread away, but you tell the story of one member of the family who is, as a child, is given a very different option and takes it.
Rose.
Rose, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that there's, on paper, you sort of want to, when you look back on history, you want to be able to say, oh, I would have been on the right side of history. I would have done it this way. But I think when you put yourselves in those shoes, sometimes the truth will really punch you in the face. And the truth is that one of their sister is light-skinned, and if she puts the right product in her hair, she can pass. And when faced with someone thinking she's white, she is faced with the choice of all of a sudden having safety and a roof over her head, and family that doesn't have to struggle, versus going back home with her real family, her blood family, when life is hard every single day. They don't know how they're going to survive. And in that moment, this child chooses safety.
Yeah, that movie Passing, I think, is about a similar thing. And that's a big issue today, especially in the midst of all the racism we have in this country. You're treading all kinds of thin lines, like safety and a harrowing life, or being judged, or being employed or not, all that stuff.
I mean, this story has been told and retold since Showboat.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Joe.
An imitation of life. That's right.
Joe, when you construct a novel, I mean, you get to go into the characters deeper and you get to do more nuance and everything, but is the dramatic arc the same? Do you build a film story and a novel story the same way in your mind?
I only know how to do it one way, right? Like it's who I am. And I started out writing screenplays. That's always been sort of the way I tackled that art. So I can't divorce myself up from it. And honestly, this isn't dodging the question. I don't know how to compare because I only know how to do it the way that I've done it. But you won't be surprised that when you read what people are saying about the book, it feels like everybody that writes about it says it's cinematic.
Yeah,
well, that makes a lot of sense because it was written by someone who lives in that world.
Well, so how far along are we in getting this thing into a big film so we can go see it and say that we know you guys?
That is a great question. What I can tell you is we are working on it.
Oh, good.
We are definitely working on it.
It seems like a natural.
It is, as Joe said, it is because he is a screenwriter initially. It is very cinematic, and when you read the book, it almost feels as if you're watching a film. Your imagination's on steroids. So it makes it easier to sell. So there's interest in it right now. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Now you have parts of your story that mirror current events. Human nature puts the rhyme in history, but there are rumors that Epstein had a photo collection, and your character Minnie, who has some skill with a camera, and I'm guessing that this is just going on. Maybe there used to be like a courtroom sketch guy behind a curtain drawing people together, but it seems to be that form of holding something over someone, has existed ever since it could.
Yeah, and even within those family bonds, right? Like she has what she has because in some degree Jasper allows her to have it, which she is not happy about, but she does recognize that not only is she second class citizen because she's black, but she's third class because she's a woman. So she does whatever she has to do to make sure that she's safe when the bullets start flying, and she's smart. So she gets photos of people in compromising situations.
Well, I just want to get this one story, before we maybe move on to Blair's career a little further. There's a thread that connects Black Bottom to our current president that begins with strange fruit. Can you share that history?
Yeah, the reason I love history is because of its connective tissue, right? Yeah. I think history is vitally important because, like, how many times in this conversation have we said that, oh, it's happening right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. It continues to happen. It continues to happen over and over and over again. It's always repeating itself. But the poem, before it was a song by Billie Holiday, was written by a Jewish man. His last name was Meerpol, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that ended up being the poem that became Strange Fruit, and Billie Holiday made it famous. But that man holds a really peculiar place in history, because when Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed, their children were left, and they were adopted by the man who wrote the poem Strange Fruit. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, a very, very young lawyer that was on that trial, was Roy Cohn, who was the man responsible for giving us Donald Trump. And so you can make a really strange...
Oh, yeah. And the man responsible for killing the Rosenbergs and all this other stuff. Unbelievable. I know it's a great story. There's a documentary about the Rosenbergs, and they talk about Meerpol. I did a little piece about blues music and people's complaint about appropriating culture. And I said, but the lines are not always that stark. For instance, one of the most powerful songs talking about the black struggle is Strange Fruit, and it was written by a Jewish guy. And a lot of these great R&B songs and blues songs were written by Jewish guys or white people, so it's not as clear-cut as it would seem. So that's a fascinating story, that whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. And if you look at like some of the greatest songwriters of our day, you could look at people like Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, right? Mm-hmm. But then if you go one step further, that country music where they have their roots have a direct lineage back to slave spirituals.
Yeah, American blues music, 100%.
So Blair, this appears in your Wikipedia page, and you can either authenticate it or debunk it. You got to know President Obama when you were researching your LA law role, and he was president of the Harvard Law Review. What did you learn from him, and would you periodically hear from him as the episodes unfolded?
That's a
no,
great
not
question.
at all. You know, I met him at that time. Didn't really know him. In fact, I met him. I was doing LA law. My character happened to be the editor of the Law Review. Nobody knew that about this guy named Barack Obama. That was really the situation at Harvard. And the Harvard Law School invited myself and some of the producers to come speak at the school. So we did. It was there afterwards. We had a dinner with Rose. I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, we had a dinner, and I met him then. And it wasn't until years later, when he was running for president the first time, he had done an interview for the New York Times and told them that they used to call him Blair Underwood on campus at Harvard because of my character. And then my manager says, "Is that true?" I said, Oh, that's that guy with the big ears. I didn't remember. So no. I've never been involved in politics and before or since, but I did campaign for him because I thought he was the right man at the right time. And I always very generous, invited us to the state dinner at the time, his first state dinner, which was amazing. So no, we never really talked a lot, but just had that kind of connection.
Okay.
Makes me weep thinking about him now. L.A. Law began in 1986, co-created by Stephen Bochco and Terry Louise Fisher. And they had huge talent. David E. Kelley was a writer on that show. And it went for 8 seasons. What a fantastic show. And so many stars were born out of that. Corbin Burnson, Jill Eikenberry, Michael Tucker, yourself. Talk about those early heady days. That was a great series of years at NBC, too. We were owning stuff back in those days.
It was so incredible. a dear friend of mine passed away the other day, Malcolm Jamal Warner.
Oh, goodness.
I've been talking a lot about those early
That was
years this
awful.
last week. He was on the Cosby Show, of course, played Theo on the Cosby Show and LA Law. We were on the same night, Thursday nights. They were at 8 o'clock. We were at 10 o'clock. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And it was just, people talk about the golden age of Hollywood was the 50s and the 40s. And it certainly was in a lot of ways, but it was just such a simpler time. It was an easier time. There was more work. I mean, so many actors and producers and writers are out of work right now as our industry continues to contract and become smaller. But also at that time, if you're on a hit show, you mentioned Ed Sullivan, 35 million people, which was amazing. I didn't know that stat, but we had 30, 40 million people watching us every Thursday night, which was incredible. Today, because of all the networks, all of the streaming channels, if you have 1 million people watching a night, that's almost a hit. A couple million, that's a hit nowadays.
And
So
you did great. You turned
time.
around some pretty great topics very quickly. You did sexual harassment, HIV/AIDS, homophobia, domestic violence, capital punishment, and turned those topics around. It was almost like torn from the headlines back in those days.
That's exactly right. And the beauty of it was we tried to show the writers, David E. Kelly, Stephen Bochco, Terry Louise Fisher, all of them, tried to really show the balance. So it really presented the issue in front of you, but you really saw both sides of the issue, which made it conflicting and it made it interesting and compelling, I think.
Definitely. Well, we're going to get into your career through a game that we play called IMDb Roulette. Blair. So we spin the
You
wheel.
can't lose. She knows all the answer, and she loves to tell actors stuff they don't remember.
No,
so
I
worry
don't.
about it.
He always accuses me of that. I want the actors to talk. This game gives us an excuse to delve into your career. And the roulette part is me stopping where I think it's interesting. So
Okay,
we
fair
should
enough.
maybe cross out the word roulette and say Wheezy picked this. So we're going to start with number 1, Knight Rider, 1985.
Yeah, I do remember Knight Rider, yes.
Okay. Tell us what you remember, and if you can, who you played.
Okay, what I remember is that I didn't get the job initially there was a sidekick to David Hasselhoff, and I didn't get the original job, and they felt so bad for me. It was between me and another actor named Peter Peros. He got the job. They felt so bad for me. They threw me a bone and said, come on out to LA. We'll give you a smaller part with 5 lines. Ended up playing some kind of punk rocker with blonde hair, paint on the face. I was trying to steal Kit. Kit was the talking car, the Trans Am. But that's what I remember about it. I remember losing that job, and thank God I was open, because then I got the LA Law part, which turned out to be a better gig anyway.
The universe has a
All
plan.
right, this is one that, probably you didn't get your biggest paycheck in show business for this one. 1988, you did Mickey's 60th birthday.
Wow.
He has no recollection of that. I mean, I guess they used a lot of the NBC stars to do this special called Mickey's 60th birthday.
They probably put the camera on the cast and said, everybody say happy birthday, Mickey.
Yeah, that
and we
was
said
it,
happy
that
birthday,
kind of-
Mickey. That's probably what that was.
Wow.
Wow,
So
you pulled that, Fritz. You pulled that out of the coffers.
So you didn't get to meet Mickey? I thought there'd be like a really good Mickey story. Okay. So let's move on. I thought maybe everyone got to go to Disneyland. That's what I was hoping happened, but
Not that time, unfortunately, no.
okay. All right, number 3, Just Cause, 1995.
It was one of the highlights of my career because, then, not so much now, it's considered a challenge to go from television to the big screen. And I'd done 7 years of a very high-profile show in LA Law, and literally the day of our last day of filming, I went to rehearse for Just Cause, which we rehearsed in the Bahamas and shot mostly in Florida, and then shot the ending in London. But there was a big studio Warner Brothers film, and I was just excited to be able to make that jump from television, nighttime television, to the big screen, and to do it with, to play opposite Sean Connery and Lawrence Fishburne, Kate Capshaw, and a 10-year-old Scarlett Johansson, by the way.
No
Oh, my
kidding.
goodness.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what was everybody like? What was Sean Connery like?
Oh, Sean Connery was such a huge presence, but he was very deliberate in his work, and he was very clear on who he was and his brand. And one thing that was nice was whenever the actors came on stage, and Ed Harris was in the film too, by the way, he did not want anybody else talking. When your stand-ins are there to set the shots and the marks and the lights, that's when everybody talks. When he walked on the stage, nobody talked. It was kind of nice. I mean, I kind of liked it just to be able to have some
get that.
peace and quiet, and be able to talk with the actors and do the work we had to do. But he was adamant about that, and spoke out a few times. There's no talking when I'm on the stage. I could never have
I
said
like
that, so I'm
that.
glad he did.
Well, it had to be an honor in 1996 for you to play in The Soul of the Game, where you
Yes.
played Jackie Robinson.
Yes. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we
Playing
can.
Jackie Robinson was a huge honor. Was a huge honor for me. And my great uncle Eli Underwood played in the Negro Leagues of baseball, so it meant so much to me to be able to just delve into that world, immerse myself into that world, being on a set and whatnot, but also to wear the costumes and the uniforms and all of that, but also to bring forth the legacy of Jackie Robinson. I had the chance to play Jackie Robinson, and that film was about Joe. Forgive us for talking about all this.
I
No,
love
we're
it.
gonna we're gonna get to Joe
We'll
in
get
a
back to
minute.
Joe.
Hey, I'm also a Blair Underwood fan, so
But it was huge to have the honor to play Jackie Robinson, and that story of Satchel Paige, the great pitcher, Josh Gibson, the great batter, and they were the superstars of the Negro Leagues, and this young upstart he had just come out of the military, but he was an excellent athlete, but not necessarily the best athlete. But he was the one who was the whole package. He was articulate, he could hold his temper, and he could play good enough baseball, and he bridged the gap from the Negro Leagues
So
to the major leagues.
Did you guys have to learn how to play with that equipment from that era?
Oh, Joe is the real history buff, but I'm fascinated by history. So, and I love to collect some antiques here and there. So to wear the clothes, but also to touch the uniforms, the cleats. I remember the cleats were horrid. I mean, there was no cushion. We're used to nice cushion sneakers and shoes nowadays. They were just very rough. They had spikes on them and very thin, by the way. So
All right,
think about and feel and believe and internalize what it was like to live in that time.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
All right, Joe.
I loved it.
Let me ask Joe a question. We'll just so tell us about Viral, Joe, and just give us a little thread about what it's about and when it's going to be released.
well, we don't have any release details that we can give out yet, but coming soon. But
okay.
it is a psychological thriller about a man who gets stuck in a mental loop, and he I don't know. So it's one of these movies that I don't want to give away too much, but his wife goes missing and he has to find her. Seems like a basic Hollywood plot, but there's a twist to this that brings it to life.
Ooh,
Wow.
that sounds captivating.
It's really fun to see Sarah do something incredibly different than what she's typically
She's
known
a
for.
good actor.
She's fantastic in
Yeah.
it.
I just love her. Well, we're going to finish out our game, if that's okay, Joe. We have Gattaca 1997.
Yeah, Gattaca, was one of those things that became a cult favorite, and I played a geneticist. I was only in one scene, maybe two scenes, but I had a scene where, as the geneticist, I was asking the two lead characters how they would like to design their child, by the way. And because of the context and the subject matter of that scene, it's had taken legs of its own over the years. But it's one of those things I did. I worked one day and I kind of forgot about it, and the movie came out like a year later, and people just, those that are into sci-fi and that kind of film just really took to it and loved it, and remember it to this day. I'm often asked about that, actually.
Oh.
Even though I look very different, I had no hair and a big round bald head and a beard. So I'm surprised when people even recognize me.
Yeah.
In 1998, you did Deep Impact.
Yes.
You played who and what was he like?
So I played one of the astronauts that was on a ship. Deep Impact was a meteor on a collision course to Earth that would hit the Earth and destroy the Earth. So I played an astronaut with about 5-6 others, Robert Duvall, led by Robert Duvall, that were going to go up to the meteor, drop bombs onto the meteor surface and make the meteor explode before it gets here to Earth. And it was just, listen, to be honest with you, whenever you do like a big budget studio film, number one, I see so much money wasted. But aside from that, you just get to play in this world that is created for you by the set designers and the production designers and the props. And it's just what I remember was having so much fun, especially during the scenes when we were floating over the meteor surface. We shot that on stage 15 at Paramount, which is their largest stage. And the entire stage was the surface of the meteor. So just to do all that and play, Joe's an actor as well. Great actor and Shakespearean expert, Shakespeare expert. But he'll tell you, in acting school, all you have usually is an empty room, maybe a black box. Everything else you have to rely on your imagination. So when you get to kind of play, you know, in those sandboxes where it's all done for you, it's fun and it's magical. And that was a magical experience.
So it's like sort of like Blair versus the meteor. Yeah.
I like that. I like Jon Favreau also is one of the astronauts who's done incredibly well in his life and career.
Yes, yes. All right, so we have to talk about Sex in the City, 2003.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're in it quite a bit, correct?
You know, I did 5 episodes of their final season. And again, that amazes me that people remember that so much to this day. And now they got their own, you know, new version of it, which is phenomenal. But I almost didn't do it because I didn't know much about it. I just knew, you know, my ex watched it all the time, and it was very popular. I knew that. But it's probably one of the best decisions that I can't take credit for that I said yes to, and so glad I did. I played opposite Cynthia Nixon, who's a gem, who's just wonderful, and yeah, that's something. My son watched it.
Really?
Wasn't even born when we did it. He watched it recently. Fast forwarded through the scenes where he saw my backside, but he said he had recently moved to New York, and it's such of course, a New York centric show. And he said it was just taken by the world of New York and that time of the 90s and you know, when we shot it.
All right. Well, there was a great movie about a very iconic black lady.
It's actually a series.
A series.
Yeah,
miniseries.
Miniseries.
Called Self-Made, about Madam C.J. Walker. You did that in 2020, and talk about that, because you were C.J. Walker as well in that thing, Charles James Walker.
Charles James, that's right, Walker. She was Mrs. Charles James Walker, Madam C.J. Walker. Mm-hmm. But of course, the story of the first female millionaire, not first black female millionaire, but first female millionaire. And she made her fortune with hair care for black women at the time. And again, because I love history and I love doing period pieces, it was just great fun to do. But also Octavia Spencer, who of course won the Academy Award, Best Supporting Actress, she would play Madam C.J. Walker. And Octavia had done, I think, 3 pilots of series I did, and each one got picked up. And I often called her my good luck charm. If she was in the pilot, the show would get picked up.
Yeah.
And now, you know, now she's won this Academy Award. She has a whole nother level of career. And it was just a great joy to work with her, because we hadn't worked together since those pilot shows in the 90s. So I think back on it fondly. I also think back on that time because it was 2019, before the world changed, before the pandemic.
Right. And for us, having it to watch during the pandemic was
That's right. And it came out during the pandemic. Like, that was crazy. I was doing Joe, you came to see a Soldier's Play on Broadway. And the week Broadway shut down, which was February, I think March of 2020, I was doing press for Madam C.J. Walker. As I'm doing press with Octavia in New York, we get the call that Broadway shut down. Wow. The NBA had already just shut down, I think, the day before. And it's just the world stopped. Now Octavia was like, I have a private jet going back to LA. I'm here. They're going to shut down New York. Do you want to get on the private jet? And my son is like, we got to get on that private jet. But as it turned out, we had to do one more show without an audience. And thank God they were able to film it. That was the final show with no audience, a few friends up in the balcony. And Broadway was shut down on Thursday night. And on that Friday, we got to go take the stage one last time. So it was nice to have closure in that respect.
Wow.
You talk about your son. Is he in show business? Any of your children in show business?
No. 3 biological children. My wife and I have 9 total, blended family. But
Holy
none of the 9. But none of my kids are into it at all. I think, you know, they've been around it their whole lives, so everything is demystified. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's either they love what that work is or not. And none of them took to it.
I want to talk about, before we lose you, talk about the Stephen Bochco magic. I mean, L.A. Law, Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blue, and even Doogie Howser. I mean, this guy was a great storyteller. Give us your personal opinion about his success.
You know, he was a phenomenal storyteller and executive producer and great man. You know, my career, this is my 40th year in this industry, and I got on L.A. Law, I think my 3rd year, and there are doors open to this day. We're having this conversation now. This book is in print now because of L.A. Law and a decision that man made. There was Greg Hoblet and Terry Louise Fisher, but it was really Stephen Bochco that made that decision. I'll never forget this first day on the set. He comes up to me And he puts his arm around me. They're in their second season. I came on the first episode of the second season, so I knew I was walking this massive hit show. He put his arm around me and he said, "How does it feel to know you have a home for the next 5 years?"
Oh, Lord have mercy. That's all you need to hear
I
right
so
there.
much pressure on me because I know that breakdown for that character said 27 to 28, no younger, no older. I was like 23 at the time. And I thought I was going to look too young once they saw the dailies and they'd fire me. And I wouldn't be able to be on the show. So I never repeated that story until after 5 years. And by the grace of God, it ended up being 7 years. And we did a show together after that called City of Angels that Octavia Spencer was in the pilot, as was Viola Davis and so many other people. But he really was a great man. You know, he took time to talk to me. We'd have lunch, and I owe my career in many, many, many ways to his decision to say, yes, I want to hire that kid.
Wow, that's powerful. All right, well, we are talking about sins of survivors, and what do you hope that people get out of just reading the book? What are you hoping that folks get out of it?
Joe, you got to take that. What I want out of it is Joe to be able to author 2,000 more books.
I want people to be entertained. I want people to not feel like they wasted their time, but I want them to like not realize that we also gave them some medicine at the same time. So like you get the drama with the mob and the murder and the sex and all the stuff, but they don't quite realize that they're getting a history lesson too, and the history lesson is so important.
That was the most fun part for me of the whole story, was the whole Black Bottom story.
What I'm finding is that it stays with you, and the characters are in your head. And, you know, for me, not so much being very attracted to grisly storylines, for me, what's staying with me are the characters and their personalities and their connection.
I think that's one of the greatest compliments you can give Joe as the writer and as storytellers, because the story of family in 1940s, even not necessarily Black Bottom, but you know, there are elements we've seen before, but it's the specificity of these individuals that inhabit the world, the characters that inhabit the world, that make the difference. So thank you for saying that, Luis.
All right, and I think your idea is to have a couple more Carter Brothers adventures. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We sort of leave it a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Are you working on it yet, or you have other things going on?
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
You left a lot of threads, and people are like, "I'd like to stitch these together."
Well, you need to come back on here and talk about the other ones, because both of you have had such amazing careers. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Fritz and Louise. What I can tell you is that our publisher, Judith Kerr, loved the idea so much, she bought 2 books. So when the second one comes out, we don't know yet, but
you got to come back on. Got to come back on. You got to come back on and talk about.
I would love to, Joe. You'd love to?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do
Or
it.
come back on and brag about Viral, whatever you want to do. We love it.
Is there a lot of interest in Detroit? Because from reading about Detroit yesterday to prepare for this conversation, people describe it as a really unique, complicated city. And so is there a lot of interest in Detroit in their own history?
You know what? I think I can speak for both of us on this. We spent some time in Detroit, and something that city has going for it is how much the people there love it. It's like, you hear that about other cities. Sure, people love their hometown, they love their sports team, but in Detroit, everybody's talking about Detroit and what's happening in Detroit and why Detroit is important. And it is infectious. It makes me want to stay there. It makes me want to write more stories there. I literally I'm talking about another job right now, and one of the big things was that when they pitched it to me, it was like, oh, it takes place in a building in Detroit, and I was like, what? Let's do it. I want to do that. So, hey, calm down. But Detroit is infectious.
They're part of the Rust Belt, and you know the whole thing about the American auto industry on the decline generally. But is there a sort of an industrial rebirth there? Has it found a new self? And how are they doing?
It's trying. It's really coming up. And I can say that like music has always found a way in Detroit.
Yeah.
Like it's switched over, and it's got a very current scene now too. But as far as industry, I think it's really just trying to grasp onto something and grow. You know, and listen, there's still car manufacturers there, but you know, just like in the book, unions are a big political talking point. There's still a big political talking point now, right? Like union busting is still a thing, and if we bust unions, then the car dealerships get hurt, or plants get shipped overseas, or to
Yep.
communities where they can pay people less. It's all tied together.
Well, I have a question that you may not know the answer to, but it is interesting for those of us who have never been to Detroit. We did hear about 10 years ago about the hollowing out of Detroit, about how it was almost like a donut where people had moved to the outskirts and the center. It was abandoned, or people had just moved out of homes, or maybe the homes went underwater in the housing crisis. Do you think that if Black Bottom had still been there, and Paradise Valley, if they had all still been there and thriving, if maybe that would not have happened?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. And I don't think there is an answer, but I will say this. I will say that now that they're trying to redevelop Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, I think putting it back would be a big draw to bring it back to life. So I don't know if it would have kept it alive, but I do think it can bring it back to life. Okay. Downtown is really thriving right now, but this is where you get into that, the rubber meets the road, because people are investing in Detroit, and they want Detroit to thrive, but we also have to make sure that the people who live there can still afford to live there.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's a balance. All right. Well, we want to thank you just so much for joining us. We really appreciate this conversation. It's been a treat. Where should folks find you? We'll have the Amazon link in our show notes. What else should we include in the show notes, guys?
That's great. Let's just push this book. Yeah. Let's get people to read this book.
Yeah.
Buy the book.
Yeah, if you're a history fan.
Audible.com.
You read the audiobook, correct?
I do. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So if you just want to listen to Blair talking, and I don't know anyone who doesn't.
Yeah, you got the big pipes working there. Now, you said on the Today Show that you wanted to do the Marvin Gaye movie. Why hasn't that happened yet?
The biggest roadblock to that are the musical rights.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So Barry Gordy has some of the rights. Capitol Records has some of the rights, and it's just wading through that malaise.
Man, you'd be so perfect for that.
Oh,
I don't know how you sing, but you have to sing good. You got that baritone. My headphones are vibrating during this conversation.
And if we do it, you got to come back on here and talk about it.
Heck yes.
Oh, yeah. So the book is Sins of Survivors. We'll have a link in our show notes. And here come your closing credits. We want to thank our guests, Joe McClean and Blair Underwood. Our team includes producer Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Bill Filipiak, Mason Brown, Raf Rusak, Jordan Reyes, Haley Freight, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palenker here with Fritz Coleman. Be well and wise. Take care of each other, and we will see you along the media path.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
That was really
Thanks for having us. Thanks for taking the time.
You're welcome. We're going to ask you to just, if you will hold it for 1 second.